boy, this is gonna be good, I can tell.
And we are back.
Here we go again.
This video is strictly for employees, and I will be referencing the Supreme Court, the House of Representatives, and the Code of Federal Regulations concerning Form W-4. So, if you've been working in America for any given period of time, you already know that every time you apply for a new job, one of the first things that the company slips in front of you is a Form W-4 for you to fill out. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself why I got to pay taxes on my own labor? I mean, don't we all have a right to work, earn a living, and live in America? Well, the Supreme Court says yes, we do, and that this right cannot be taxed. So from where do these American companies get the idea that they need to deduct taxes out of our paychecks? And if you were to ask, they will tell you that it's the law, and that the intended purpose of Form W-4 is so that they can do just that, take taxes out of your paycheck. And they assume that by making you sign that Form W-4, they are complying with the law. Almost all American companies do believe that anybody who works and makes a living in America is required to pay taxes on their labor. But if you really think about it, wouldn't a law like that not conflict with a right to make money, to work, and to not be taxed based on our labor? Of course it would. So at this point, buckle up because you're in for a bumpy ride. And when I say it's going to get bumpy, I mean for you, because this could be the very first time that you will ever see the law concerning Form W-4. Let's cover the section of the code that deals with an employee furnishing to his employer a signed Form W-4 when he commences his employment. And here it is. This is Title 26, the Internal Revenue Code. Subtitle C, which deals with employment taxes. Chapter 24, Collection of Income Tax at Source on Wages. You are looking at Section 3402 entitled Income Tax Collected at Source. Paragraph F2A, which deals with the withholding allowance and allowance certificate on commencement of employment. And it reads, on or before the date of the commencement of employment with an employer, the employee shall furnish the employer with a signed withholding allowance certificate relating to the withholding allowance claimed by the employee, which shall in no event exceed the amount to which the employee is entitled. We just read the section of the code that deals with an employee furnishing his employer a signed withholding certificate. Now, let's read the corresponding regulation, which will add more detail and make it more clear who the employee actually is. Now, this is the Code of Federal Regulations for Title 26, Internal Revenue Code. It's 31.3402F2-1, A1, titled Furnishing of Withholding Allowance Certificates. And it reads, A, on commencement of employment, on or before the date on which an individual commences employment with an employer, the individual must furnish the employer with a signed withholding allowance certificate. And then there's other implications. You can read those later. Here, in the regulations under 31.3402F5-1A1, under form and contents of withholding allowance certificates, we find that it is Form W-4, the Employees Withholding Certificate, previously called Employees Withholding Allowance Certificate. It's the form prescribed for the withholding allowance certificate required to be furnished under Section 3402F2, which we already read. The rest of it you can read at your own time. You could always pause the video and go back to it and read it again. But what I want to point out to you at this point is the slight difference in language between the code and the regulation. I'll show you what I mean. In the code, it tells you that the employee shall furnish the employer with a signed withholding certificate. In the regulation, on the other hand, it tells you that it's the individual that must furnish the employer with a signed withholding allowance certificate. And you may be wondering, why is that significant? Well, it is extremely significant. And here's why. If you know anything about law, you would know that they use legal terms. Instead of just plain English words, they use legal terms. And legal terms must be defined by law. So, in any legal matter, whatever the case may be, legal terms must be defined and a definition section must be provided and numbered for reference in order to provide guidance to the reader so that the reader may understand what the legal terms implemented are trying to convey in any section of the law. And as you may know, Title 26, the Internal Revenue Code, is no different. And I point this out because here in the regulations, under section 1.1441-1C3I, is the only section of the regulations that provide the definitions for the term individual. And as you can see, it is an alien individual. And it reads, the term alien individual means an individual who is not a citizen or a national of the United States. In other words, the alien individual is a foreign person. So when you read either the code or the regulation and you find that they're using the term individual, you start to understand that that individual is in fact an alien individual. And that is why section 1.1441-1 is entitled Requirement for the Deduction and Withholding of Tax on Payments to Foreign Persons. And here's another kicker. When you match the code with its corresponding regulation and you find that the employee being mentioned is an individual, then you can safely start drawing the conclusion that the employee is indeed, in law, an alien individual. Under the general definition section for the whole title, under subtitle F, Procedure and Administration, chapter 79, which is the definitions, in section 7701A, it'll tell you that when used in this title, were not otherwise distinctly expressed or manifestly incompatible with the intent thereof, under paragraph 50B1B, we find the definition for non-resident alien. And it reads, an individual is a non-resident alien if such individual is neither a citizen of the United States nor a resident of the United States. So when you look back at chapter 24, which falls under employment taxes, section 3402 is the section that demands the furnishing of Form W-4 from the employee to the employer. But if you look closer, you will notice that before you reach section 3402, you come across section 3401, which is the definition section for chapter 24. And it is in section 3401 where we learn who the employee and the employer specifically are. And since the withholding and the deducting of the taxes is done on the paycheck of the employee, then it becomes clear that the pivotal term that will clear the smokescreen for us is the term employee. And it reads as follows. For purposes of this chapter, speaking of chapter 24, the term employee includes an officer, employee, or elected official of the United States, a state or any political subdivision thereof, or the District of Columbia, or any agency or instrumentality of any one or more of the foregoing.
Say what?
Now look at the definition of employer. And it reads, for purposes of this chapter, which is again chapter 24, the term employer means the person for whom an individual performs or performed any service of whatever nature as the employee of such person.
Say what? Say what?
At this point, you might be dumbfounded by what you just read and saw with your very own eyes. But trust me, it gets better. Okay, I'm going to stop the video right here because I don't want to bore you out too much, but I do hope that I have your attention and that you're intrigued enough that you want to come back and watch the follow-up video. So with that in mind, I hope you subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and share it with everybody that you know. And I will see you on my next video.